So there's usually two contracts. You buy the land first, you settle on the land in about 6 months' time, and then usually you pay a deposit for that land, and then the build kicks in. The builder, like Thomas Paul, will go and start constructing on it, which takes another 6 months or 9 months. There's repayments involved for that entire process, because you're paying, once you've settled on the land, you're paying interest on that loan component on the land. And then there is progressive payments coming out of your account, which is the loan approved. Now we can do all that for you, but it's very time consuming. It takes a lot of time, it costs a lot of money. Inflation often kicks in as well, which means sometimes, you know, your interest rates goes up and down. We've got a room, in this room we've got some people from the mortgage industry who are our partners as well, and they could structure all those loans for you, but we've simplified that process for you guys. You can actually buy a property in Thornton, that house over there that Ari's talking about. You can actually buy that with $25,000 deposit, and then nothing to pay for a year, which is the entire time the house is being built by Thomas Paul. So they're actually the ones forking out the cash, paying the workers. Now, I'm pretty sure Thomas Paul has a majority of workers in-house, is that correct? You don't contract jobs out?
Very rarely.
Thomas Paul is probably one of the only builders that I like working with, because the tradies working on the job site actually employed under their payroll. So there's no way you'll have somebody not turning up to do work because they're getting paid weekly. So the cash flow is very important in the building industry. I've been bitten in the past where I bought a block of land, I've hired a cheap builder, and then he can't build at that cost anymore. So year after, I had to get a different builder go in and finish off the job. That cost me a lot of time, efforts, you know, headaches. So we've simplified that for you. There's obviously options to convert it into a single contract. You don't always have to do that, because some of you might say, no, I'm happy to buy as a land plus build. There's advantages to that because you pay the stamp duty, okay? Because when you buy, for those who don't know, when you buy a land and you build on it, you're only paying stamp duty on the land component, as opposed to when you're buying a house that's single contract, you actually pay stamp duty, which is one of the biggest costs involved in buying, purchasing a property. You actually pay on the entire amount. So these homes, single contract conversion, are more designed for convenience and also get you into that property market with $25,000 deposit. So that's the deal we've striked at the moment. In Thornton, for example, now that's just one of the areas we've got that deal. We're working along with other builders where we constantly go promoting ourselves as a group. So this is not just about me going and buying a property or selling you a property. This is about all of you putting a concept together and saying, look, this is the area I want to buy a property in. Can you go to Thomas Paul or another builder and negotiate a deal? And that's what we're doing strongly over there. So there's few people in this room who've actually bought out a couple of properties using that structure. I can put a couple of people on the spot. You know, Rav's one of our new BDMs, has bought a couple of properties now using that structure. Yeah. So your first property there you bought in, it was in Hamlin Terrace.
That's right.
Does anyone know where Hamlin Terrace is? How much deposit did you need to get into that property? $5,000?
That's it.
There you go.
Yes.
So we actually exchanged on a property with $5,000. So this is why I'm very passionate about growing this group together. This is not a real estate company trying to sell you properties. This is about putting a group together, going up to a builder like Thomas Paul and saying, mate, you do a great job, but what can we do to make it easier for us? Does that make you feel a bit better about making that decision, getting into the property market? That you can buy a property with $5,000 and then make capital growth? Because you got nothing to pay for a year and a half until Thomas Paul's constructing that property. Once the property settles, you make the market growth. Now there's another thing I've started doing within that group is that second part over there. We started organising PAIG deposit grants. Now you heard of government grants, right? Everybody knows what government grant means, right? You buy a property and you claim a first time buying grant, or does anyone know what a PAIG grant means? So what that grant means, so you're putting in let's say for example, you bought a property for a $5,000 deposit. Thomas Paul says to me, no, we need more deposit. $5,000 is not enough to buy a property. So if you can get $15,000, we're probably talking, because we need some kind of commitment. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ari, builders don't really need 10% to kick off a job, right? That money just sits in a trust account, correct?
Correct.
You guys know that? The 10% deposit they normally pay when you're buying a property sits in a solicitor trust account. Builders never acquires that or uses that money unless the builder has less poor cash flow, then he obviously wants you guys to release that deposit to him. So I came up with an idea with Ari about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I said, mate, you know what? Now obviously we're real estate licensed, so how we make money is we make money from the commissions we get paid for selling the property to you from these builders. So I'm being very generous because I've had my journey of last 11 years, and there was, I learned the hard way. There was nobody who will sit down with me and say, Karan, you can actually buy a property and I can actually give you a part of my commission as your deposit. Does anybody know you can do that? Before you step into this seminar today? You bought properties before?
Well, you can always negotiate with the agent for the agent to rebate the commission. It depends on if the agent's willing to do it or not.
Exactly right. But it's hard, isn't it? Especially in a hot market like today.
Oh, well, I think a lot of agents would rather keep the commission for themselves.
Exactly right. So I've been through that path when I've sat down with property companies, I've tried to grow my portfolio, and I've asked them to help me. I've just bought a property, my deposit's all gone, but I still want to buy another one. What can you do for me? So that deposit grant, you use the word rebate. Rebate's actually taxable. You actually pay tax on that rebate. When an agent gives you a discount on a property, you're actually paying capital gain tax on it, because your purchase price has just dropped down. When you sell that property, you make a gain, it's taxable rebate. So we're doing a bit smart. We're actually using our commissions towards your deposit. Now that 10,000 over there, which is on the table if you buy a property in Thornton, for example, is completely tax-free. That's like $16,000, $17,000. Would that be, is that right, depending on tax bracket? So you're practically saving $16,000, $17,000. That's instant, roughly up to 5% capital growth you've made by just exchanging on the property. Does everybody know you make money in Australia when you exchange on a property, not the day you settle? Who knows that? So you actually make capital growth from the day you exchange on a property, not the day you settle. Which means, once you've signed off on that contract of sale with $25,000 or $10,000 or $5,000, if I've given you a grant of $10,000 towards your deposit, we actually give you a receipt for $20,000. I repeat. So if you buy that Thornton townhouse, not this house over here, or if, let's say for argument's sake you buy this house for $25,000 deposit, we'll give you a receipt for $35,000. Now we don't advertise these things on the internet. We keep these things only organic in-house, because if people start finding out how it's done, it reduces the power of what we're doing here. We're trying to put a group together. Now, if you could buy a property with $10,000, how many properties would you be buying? Who's got more than 5 properties here in this room? More than 5 properties? So, if you got $10,000, you got $50,000 in your bank account, and if you've got a nice borrowing capacity, and I say to you, mate, you can exchange on a property say for $10,000, would you be inclined to buy a couple, maybe? Right? Because you still got $30,000 left in your account, you've got nothing to worry about for a year and a half. And on top of that, you made $10,000 instant capital growth because I've actually given you a receipt for $20,000. It's completely legal, there's nothing wrong about it. Now, we've been doing things with Thomas Paul for over 3 years now. I personally have bought more than 5 properties with Thomas Paul. I used to be the bloke going on realestate.com, trying to find an investment property, and then once you buy it, what happens? You've saved them $90,000, you pay 10% deposit, about $60,000 or $40,000 depending on the purchase price. Then you pay the stamp duty on settlement, because normally when you find properties on realestate.com, they're like 42-day settlement, is that correct? That wipes you out of the market for 2-3 years. So very often when I go to a normal investor and say, mate, are you looking at buying an investment property? He goes to me, I just bought one. I don't think so I can afford one for the couple of years. That's right, because your deposit's just gone, it's finished. There's nothing left in your bank account. You've got a little bit left to have your life and your kids and your lifestyle. You could buy properties under that structure, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on your borrowing capacity, obviously. You can buy as many as you like, right? And you're making the market growth, because these properties have been growing in areas, which is what Ari mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. These areas are not just areas that Thomas Paul goes and says, let's buy a block of land over here. You always remember, these builders like Thomas Paul, they're buying blocks of land before you, so their purchase value on these blocks of land is millions of dollars. So they've done more research than I would actually have to put in when I buy just one single townhouse in the property, right? So sometimes I give the benefit of the doubt to 37 years of experience and say they don't want to buy that block of land until they think that land's going to grow. So I've expanded my portfolio now. For those who don't know, I'll just show you, I was actually featured in one of the magazine articles. Does anybody know your property investment magazine, by any chance? Your property investment magazine? Yep. So, just open it up. So I was featured in this magazine. My article was published in July this year. I'll just go to my portfolio quickly. That was probably my portfolio 4 years ago. I've been buying properties in India, I've been buying properties in the US and Canada. So I'm pretty experienced in what I'm doing, but when I come across Thomas Paul, it just changed my life. I started buying more properties. So I used to be the bloke going buying properties in Blacktown for $200,000. Now that would cost me $21,000 in deposit plus stamp duty, 42-day settlement, and then I'm done. So I bought one in 2010, 11, 13, 14, 15, so I was going like a snail, right? And then I said, when I met Ari Ryan, I said, mate, this is great. If I can buy properties with $10,000 deposit, so I've sold them all. I don't need these properties anymore. You know, I just go and follow these builders, especially Thomas Paul. So it's changed my life, and now I've recently bought about 5 properties in 1 year with Thomas Paul Construction. A couple of them have just settled, and I'm about to just sell them and flip them, and I've made money in them. 3 of them I actually bought, I've exchanged on them, so I'm making money as we speak, but I don't have to settle on the property for the next 3 years. So if I did my portfolio again, you'll see 2016, 4 properties, 2015, 4 properties, and that's courtesy of Thomas Paul. But more importantly, courtesy of PAIG. This is not me, this is you guys. This is courtesy of you guys giving me the buying power. Because if we can't go and buy 10 properties in Thornton, which we've done in the past, and I'll show you some examples quickly on our portal, this is not possible. That deal doesn't exist if Trent picks up the phone and say, Ari, I'm looking at buying one property. So these properties are advertised on realestate.com. If I was to call those agents that are advertising these properties, did they get that deal?
No.
Absolutely not. So you could feel free to call a real estate agent, mate, I've just seen a property in Thornton from Thomas Paul Construction. They'll say to you, mate, it's standard 10% deposit, and obviously there won't be any talks about grants. So this is organic. Keep these things to yourself, or only share it with people that you really care about, because you don't want this to go out then Thomas Paul getting attacked by 15 different property companies like us saying, can we get the same deal, right? So that's the deal here today that you get. Obviously, infrastructure's done, research on infrastructure is done by the builder. I do my research as well. Then I take your buying power to Thomas Paul Construction, providing you have the borrowing capacity, and say, mate, what deal can you do for us? Does that sound exciting? Does that sound like you could make your property journey easier than what I was doing too? If I turn my time around, you know, I still remember 4 years ago, I had somebody drop in a manual of Thomas Paul. Thomas Paul's, what was the first project called in Hamlin Terrace?
Was that Peony Place?
Peony Place, and that booklet just sat on my table and I did absolutely nothing. I did not buy any property in Peony Place. 2 years later, when I started to understand property market a lot better, I said, hang on, well, I can do this smartly, and I started doing that. You know, $20,000, great, Ari, there you go, let's exchange on a property. $10,000, Ari, there you go, let's exchange on a property. You're exposing yourself to less risk as well, because if you can't get approved, you're only losing $10,000, which may or may not be a loss.